Hi, this is Kevin Lyons, and I want to welcome you to the next live broadcast of the event stream. We have a special guest on today, and we're going to continue this process of going through the building blocks of the virtual event blueprint, which we use over at Lyons Solutions to build out our clients' events. We do large events, small events, and all of them we kind of distilled down and said, you know what, these are the core essential things that we really need to make this happen. And today we're talking all about event platforms. Before we get started, I would like to thank our sponsors. Ecamm Live, you're such a great sponsor. We appreciate everything. Of course, you gotta have the mug to prove it. We also, we produce all of our live events on Ecamm. We also have TubeBuddy as our sponsor. Welcome TubeBuddy and our friend Rob over there. TubeBuddy is a phenomenal growth hacking tool for YouTube. So anyone who is doing anything on YouTube should be using TubeBuddy to grow that. And of course, our company, I'm CEO and Chief Solutions Officer at Lyons Solutions, and we just like to thank them all. So today we have Karlet Hewitt from the Purpoint Group, and Karlet is going to take us through a lively conversation of all of these platforms, and she has some really unique experience going through those. But before we get to that, I want to introduce my co-hosts, which are two of the huge pillars that Lyons Solutions success rides on. And welcome Brittany and Amy. How are you guys doing?
Hey everybody, thanks for having us.
Awesome. So Brittany and Amy, they're both senior directors at Lyons Solutions. Brittany is over all things educational design, speaker management, content design, accreditation. We do a lot of healthcare and accredited activities. She just is the rock star of all of that. Amy, I call her the rainmaker. She brings the funds, the sponsorships, the dollars, the exhibits, the butts and seats, everything there dealing with audience generation as well. So thank you both for jumping on. So today we're not going to waste a lot of time because we want to get to this conversation with Karlet, but Brittany and Amy, say hi to the folks.
Hey everyone, I am so happy to be here. We have some really fun things to talk about today. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'll echo their sentiments. We have a great show for you guys. Cannot wait to deep dive into some of these platforms and hopefully bring a lot more value to you as you search for yours.
That's right. I mean, because platform clarity, I think in our research, I think we've identified well over 300 platforms that are out there. I mean, back in the day, it was like, you would use GoToWebinar or, possibly Zoom, and stuff. But now, as we go through pandemic, or maybe as we approach post-pandemic, we have now 300 some odd event platforms. And I know back when we pivoted, the largest event we ever did, and that was back in last year, we pivoted in August and March for an event planned in August. It took us weeks and weeks and weeks of searching and finding the right recipe for the platform for our event. And what we found is there is not a right recipe for every event. And so we're going to go through a lot of those today. This is all based upon the blueprint that we put together. And last week, we just want to thank Stephanie Liu. She did an amazing job helping us give you an overview of this blueprint. But today we're focusing on platforms, and that is virtual platforms, Bliss, navigating to identify how do you choose the right platform for you. In the coming weeks, we have registration. Amy, what are we going to talk about with registration and marketing?
Oh yeah, marketing matters. Innovative registration strategies to grow your audience. So that's going to be great.
Awesome. And then up after that, Brittany, this is all you, right?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about presenters and how we can elevate them to be prepared to go virtual.
That's right. And then, of course, sponsorships. This is going to be another one driven by Amy. And we have a lot of special guests that are in the works coming up on these. There's so many ways to sponsor virtual events. I mean, the opportunities are endless. And, of course, audience engagement. Brittany, we are an outcomes-focused provider of events where when we do the healthcare events, we have to report back to grant funders about the outcomes. And really, that's driven by what?
That's really driven by their engagement. So this one is actually my personal favorite. So that one's the one I'm looking forward to most.
Absolutely. And so much fun. And, I know a lot, if you're not doing accredited events or you're not doing things that are high sponsor events, sometimes you lose focus and you think engagement is just maybe some of the vanity metrics, but really there's a lot of data that you can dig into that. And of course, run of show, designing that perfect flow for your audience and for the presenters and the content continuity. And then we're going to end on production, one of my favorites of how do we pull it all together and execute that. So as we get into that, Brittany and Amy, give us an overview. When we talk about platforms, I mean, there's all types of different platforms out there. Tell us a little bit about what we kind of see in the marketplace as far as platform categories, if you will.
Sure. So there's the all-in-one platforms like HeySummit, Hopin, Run the World, and SwapCard. There's 3D virtual environments where you have like your vFairs, your Remo, and that's the skeuomorphism platforms. Then you have a registration application, which are like Cvent and Eventbrite. Some streaming platforms, Ecamm Live, shout out to Ecamm, thanks again. OBS, or Open Broadcast System, vMix, which is a PC-only program. And Brittany, why don't you kick off the other ones?
Yeah, thanks for sharing those. There are more. There's actually a ton, but the last few are, we have engagement tools. Those would be Slido, Medium Pulse, Poll Everywhere, and Kahoot. Attendee networking, which would be SwapCard, Run the World, Remo. Then you have video conferencing, which are really familiar with most people, Skype, GoToMeeting, Zoom. And then there's event planning and production management. One of those is ShowFlow.
Awesome. So, I mean, there are just so many different types of platforms. And I think what we need to do is jump right into this discussion of how do we choose the right platform for the right solution. And so with that, I would like to introduce our guest, Karlet Hewitt. Karlet, how you doing today?
Hi. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Brittany. Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Karlet. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. So Karlet, tell me a little bit about what your experience has been as, maybe even before pandemic, and then as you pivoted through pandemic. And I'd love to hear about that thing called Clubhouse and some of the cool things you did on Clubhouse.
Very good. So pre-pandemic, I was actually doing brand management. I worked with a lot of artists who performed on cruise ships. And as you all know, at the top of the pandemic, cruise ships were docked and right. And so we had to figure out a way to still get our artists in front of their, audiences to perform in an innovative way. And so quickly pivoted to virtual events.
Awesome. And then when you pivoted though, what were some of the approaches you took to finding that right platform? I mean, because there's so many.
Sure. So initially when we pivoted right away, it just made sense to take everything over to Facebook. And so we launched a few Indiegogo campaigns and Patreon campaigns to crowdfund. And we had a few activations over on Facebook. And then this magical thing happened. Virtual event platforms started popping up. And it went from one event platform to, as you said previously, Kevin, over 300 platforms today. The first platform that I started streaming on with my clients was Hopin. Really engaging platform, super easy, all in one. I love the networking feature on Hopin, and so it is the selling point. So we started over on Hopin, and since then have done different activations on various platforms, and it's been really, really fun.
So cool. So real quick, before we jump in a little bit more about some of maybe the approach to finding those platforms, tell me about this cool thing you did on Clubhouse. And just as a refresher, if you're not on Clubhouse, Clubhouse is a audio-only social network that has popped up recently and has really led the way forward. And now that you have, Twitter Spaces and some other, ones, I just heard that Twitch, Discord is just launching an audio platform. And so they're all starting to step into the space. But what's your Clubhouse experience for yourself professionally? And then tell us about this event that you did on Clubhouse. Sure.
Clubhouse has been like a secret weapon, and it should be a secret weapon for you too. Whatever industry you're in, everybody should be on Clubhouse. So recently I produced a podcast culture conference on Clubhouse for podcasters globally. It was an all-day 12-hour event. It was amazing, all audio. We basically brought in the best podcasters internationally, domestically, and we just had an afternoon full of entertainment, games. It was so much fun. I don't even know. It was like a whole day, a conference experience, all audio focused on Clubhouse.
Well, now
wow.
That's awesome, honestly.
Right. I mean,
you don't have to worry about doing your hair or anything. So you're like, just go.
In your PJs, imagine 12 hours in your PJs in your living room, just making an impact. It was great.
And,
Wow, that's
and what's
awesome.
so great is the engagement tactics on Clubhouse. And if you haven't been on Clubhouse yet, definitely join. All four of us are on Clubhouse. We love it. I've met so many different people. It really expands your
Yeah.
network really fast. But it is audio only, but there's a lot of engagement. Think of it as a stage, and you can raise your hand and come on stage and audibly interact with with the moderators on there. With that, I mean, what do you think Clubhouse has? So conventional conferences and events and summits, they're virtual. I mean, how can someone integrate Clubhouse to add that, extra element to it?
Sure. So I actually first discovered utilizing the platform as an additional stream of engagement, if you will, in a virtual event. When I attended, what event was this? I attended Complex Land. And so I attended Complex Land in the fall, and basically we all just gathered on the app and started talking about the activation, the virtual event that Complex Land had put on. And we wanted to engage with each other. We had live interaction, and we were like, wait a minute, we're actually creating community while this event is taking place, right? And I think they were actually like a built-in platform within their software, but we created our own, we as in me. And so I gathered so many people across the globe for 5 days over on Clubhouse, and we basically just dissected every single element of this virtual event. And so it just made sense that I produced my own. And so myself, along with two other amazing individuals, Mario Armstrong and Sean Anthony, we collaborated and put on this awesome 12-hour event, really tapping into all of our senses, because it's all audible. So you have to basically pull in the audience using music, games, giveaways, a Slack channel, if you will, or some sort of third-party chat integration, just to make sure like you're holding everyone's attention for 12 hours.
And
I love what you said too about creating that community in a virtual world, right? Like, so bravo on that, because I know that can be a challenge for all of us in the event industry as we have been in this, what do you call it, pandemic, post-pandemic world, Kevin? I have to get the lingo down.
There's like pandemic, maybe pan-pandemic or post-pandemic.
I've heard people calling it the panini. I'm like, don't call it the panini.
The panini, don't do that to that beautiful sandwich.
Don't ruin a panini.
That is so good. I mean, Brittany and Amy, I mean, I'm thinking like in our healthcare, space. I mean, a lot of times healthcare professionals are a little lower on the technology, ladder, if you will, as far as, implementing new platforms and stuff. But it'd be interesting to do like an audio only conference, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there could be a lot of, go ahead, Brittany. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it'd be super interesting. Like you said, I'm on Clubhouse. And when I first joined, I was a little skeptical because I like podcasts. But I partially like them because I can kind of do them while I'm doing something else. But with Clubhouse, I tend to be a little more like glued to participating, right? And I think something like that for our audience, even though there may not be as technically savvy, I think would be super cool to try out.
Yeah, for sure. And Clubhouse has that ultimate FOMO, the fear of missing out, because if you're not there and it's not live, you're missing it. And I remember when I first got on Clubhouse, I mean, I had the thing on like, 6-8 hours a day, like, back in the days of like talk radio and stuff. And I was like, I got to give myself a break. I mean, it can get crazy. You got to put limits up.
Well, not only that, but the FOMO is, sorry, Android users, it's still, unless I've missed it, not available yet for Android users, so, or Google phones or whatever it's called now. Yeah. So that's also kind of interesting too, because it's like, oh, I want to invite you, but you don't have an iPhone. It's like...
Yeah. So I have to tell you, people literally, that FOMO effect on the virtual events it's a real added element. It's an upsell, right? For anybody that's hosting event, like if you're looking to kind of have that exclusivity component, Clubhouse is a great way to incorporate that into your virtual event.
Yeah, we've seen more and more after parties. We were involved with Evolve 2.0 and some of the other larger events, and they leveraging Clubhouse for the after conversation, the after party, and a lot more access, to people as well. I mean, Elon Musk was on Clubhouse, and all these people, they get on, and if you're at least the first 50 people in the room, you get a lot of access. Beyond that, good luck, right? So. Karlet, as we kind of, maybe reset the room, as you will, I mean, because that's a Clubhouse terminology, you'll
PTR.
Hear people, pull the refresh, PTR, reset the room. So as we reset the room, so let's say that we have viewers and taking, I almost call them attendees, viewing, this the stream or the replay, and they're saying, oh my goodness, I have a live event coming up. I have a conference, I have a one day, I have a webinar, I have something coming up. What are some of the components that they should be looking at as they're trying to decide what platform that they should implement for, their live stream conference and event? And I'd have to say, as we talk through the components that Brittany and Amy brought out, is there are streaming platforms and like production platforms like Ecamm Live, which we're streaming on here today, but ultimately you have to point them somewhere and you have to give the attendee somewhere to join that broadcast and that stream. What are some of the things that you look for in a great platform?
Sure. So for me, I always start with the end in mind. So I think about the ease of use for the end user. I think organizers don't consider that enough. For me personally, I'm a tech junkie. And so when I'm looking at all these platforms and I'm doing all these demos, they're fun for me. But then I also think about, well, how easy is it going to be for an audience who is maybe an older crowd who's not so tech savvy, right? So I think it's really important for organizers to consider the end users in mind before even choosing any platform.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
I love that
great.
Because Kevin, even to your point, we do a lot of events for our client who isn't as tech savvy as we just discussed, and we definitely kept that in mind. I know for ours, we were really considerate of them having how many clicks do they have to click to get somewhere? Are they going to have to leave the page or have to find that page back? We were really, really thoughtful of that. I think that's a super huge important factor that a lot of people don't think about. So I agree 100%.
Yeah, or when you have Zoom links and it's all on one page and it's no, you have to go in this way, kind of going to the fact that our particular client is not as tech savvy in certain ways. You could lose a lot of engagement right there, right? People just won't find the right room I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I also think too, not just considering the older community, but also the younger community as well, right? So when we think about hosting virtual activations for teenagers or even children, right? So if I'm doing a virtual activation, which I'm actually producing something next week for school-age children, we're going to use Zoom. We have to use Zoom because it's what they're most familiar with. It's what's most easy for the parents. You think about the parents are the ones who are going to have to get their children to that endpoint, right? And so again, just starting with the end user in mind.
Right. So Zoom was kind of like our primer, right, for all things virtual pivot, and even with our clients, we had the whole board of directors on Zoom with all of the Lyons team, and we're planning events and stuff. And then when we started to migrate into the live stream broadcast element, one of the things that we found is kind of a special sauce, for our events, is we love to keep attendees on one page, on one place. All day long without them having to click anything. So we built a custom platform specifically for our client that allowed that. And we did basically one contiguous broadcast. And so we broadcasted from, 9 a.m. in the morning till 10 o'clock at night on one stream all day long, trying to prevent them from hopping off. With that, there's some other platforms out there like SwapCard, for instance. They have the ability of taking you to different rooms, as you go through the progression of the live event. I know, Karlet, you've had a lot of experience with Hopin. Tell us a little bit about what Hopin is and what it brings to the table and what that user experience is like on that.
Sure. It's actually one of my favorites. It's my favorite virtual event platform. Being one of the first that I had the opportunity to work with and formulating a really, really great relationship with the team over at Hopin. It is a really interactive, super user-friendly, out-of-the-box virtual solution. If you are someone who is looking for something to have your attendees both engage and kind of stay on one platform, I think I'm always going to recommend Hopin as my first go-to for now. It's definitely an all-in-one solution, very easy to use, super flexible. You can do lots of customizations with third-party live streaming software, so OBS, vMix, StreamYard, Ecamm, of course. And yeah, I really recommend Hopin.
Now, with Hopin, my understanding is it does everywhere from the marketing, registration, agenda management, speaker management, kind of like all the way through, to even the recap and post activity and replays, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's
and some. literally every Monday, I'm always impressed with how quickly they're able to roll out new integrations. I stay abreast of all things Hopin all the time because it is ever changing. I watched it evolve significantly at the start of the pandemic to today. It's a great platform.
So with that, just a curiosity, and this is something that we kind of hit with our primary client. We had a lot of infrastructure built. So we have Infusionsoft or Keep, for all of our CRM and our marketing automation. We have Agora Pulse for all of our social media strat. I mean, we have all of these different components out there that we needed something to fully integrate, especially because the client is an accredited provider of education. So we issued CE, and there's a lot of rigmarole around how we issue those and the records we keep. With Hopin, does it integrate with like Infusionsoft or CRMs like ActiveCampaign? Okay, so it does have that piece of it.
Yeah, most recently in the last, I want to say 30 days, you have the ability to integrate Marketo, MailChimp, I want to say Salesforce for sure, HubSpot. Yeah, it definitely has lots of opportunities for integration.
So another
I have a
platform.
question, actually.
Sure, go ahead, Brittany.
Karla, I know for us, one huge factor when we're considering platforms and virtual events is how we can manage and kind of put out our sponsorships for branding and different ways to sponsor stuff. Is that a huge component for you? And is that a factor when you're deciding how to select something or execute something?
Very, very, very important. Of course, not only is it important to the clients, but it's also important to the brands with how much opportunities they're going to have to kind of market their product and or services. With any platform, it's also a very important factor to consider. How many opportunities do you have within that platform? How many areas am I going to have to click around? Is it going to be something? Can I showcase a video? Can I showcase a slide? Is my logo going to be apparent the entire time throughout the activation? There are lots to consider when incorporating sponsorship opportunities on any virtual event platform.
Yeah, same for us. And I was
question.
just curious. Yeah, Amy, any thoughts, I guess, from your perspective? I know that that's definitely your wheelhouse.
Yeah, no, you got it, girl. I was just thinking the same thing, actually. Like, what have you found any limitations? I know we're not talking specifically about sponsorships today, but what have you seen and how have you found strengths and weaknesses on different platforms, not just Hopin, with your sponsorship opportunities?
Yeah, I've done a number of platforms. I've worked with a number of platforms, and something that I find that can be a little hindering is you, as a sponsor, if I'm investing X amount of dollars in ad spend, right, I want to make sure that you're seeing my logo the entire time. I don't want it to be hidden, right? I want to make sure like I'm a present part of the event, that I'm able to kind of maybe showcase maybe like a graphic or an ad top of the page. I want to be present, you know what I mean? And so I haven't seen any platform that's gotten that right yet. I could be mistaken, but it is something that I do challenge some of these tech companies to consider, especially when considering asking, sponsors for ad dollars. We want to be seen.
I actually really like Run the World. I got to attend a conference on Run the World, and I loved how they did them as pop-ups and then like little confetti, and then they made them go away. I thought that was fun, right? Like kind of, yeah. So it's not like the focus, but it's like before every session, like this was sponsored by, and then at the end, as soon as it goes away in the next 5 or 10 seconds, But I think it's per user as you log on to that session. So then that sponsorship is front and center, but then it goes away, and then I thought it was fun that it had confetti on it.
Yeah,
very cool.
For sure.
I just learned to Run the World as well. I attended an event recently. I didn't see that feature, but very cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So what were some of, and we have a Facebook user asking, they would love to hear your opinion of Run the World. I mean, what were your experience when you attended that event?
It was really nice. In my opinion, I think it was more so focused on the video content, more so than the engagement. I saw they had like a poll-in feature built in. There was like a running chat log, but I didn't see anything outside of that. And I could be wrong. Maybe it was just the features that organizer selected. But yeah, it was really heavily focused on the video content.
Yeah.
I can echo that. That's my experience with it as well.
It was heavy on the video content. I attended Agora Pulse had their social summit focused on Instagram recently on Run the World, and Ann Hanley and Carrie DeGoran and everyone. It was a phenomenally done event by Agora Pulse. It reminded me of, so we use Meeting Pulse as our engagement platform, and Meeting Pulse we embedded inside a WordPress site. And now Meeting Pulse, you can use it standalone, but it doesn't have, I wouldn't call it an all-in-one by any stretch. However, their engagement tactics of having pulse or emojis that you can float over the screen as that engagement back and forth with the speaker. Of course, Q&A. I think the mainstays is you have to have Q&A, you have to have a chat function, you have to have polling, you have to have those are now commodities, right? It's
Right.
what are you going to do that one extra step? And I think some of them, like Whova, tries to do a lot of networking, but Run the World, I think it's close to meeting Pulse as far as the engagement. I did see a little bit of discontinuity on going in between different sessions. You still had to come out of a session back to that main hallway or back to that agenda to find your way back into a session. And so I wouldn't mind taking a deeper look at that to see if maybe there's a configuration option on there.
Yeah.
Same with swap card.
Yeah. Same with swap card. You had to come out and go back in. So another popular one that I think we probably have all had some experience with is HeySummit. HeySummit is, we actually almost went with HeySummit for our major conference, but Karlet, to your point, we hit a big roadblock with our sponsors. So we, usually our sponsors are, stick a logo on it sponsors, to where, they want to see a slide with their logo on it, some type of recognition of sponsored by. We also have grant sponsorships, which is a little bit more discreet because we can't show that they had any impact in the content. But we also have like product theaters, which are, paid, speaking spots, if you will, and exhibitors. And we went through all of these different things, and HeySummit looked so promising. We actually was introduced to HeySummit because last year Ecamm used HeySummit for their, I think it was Let's Get Live, I'm butchering, not Let's Get Live, Jump into Live, or Jump in the Stream, or something like that, where a lot of people, were part of that. But HeySummit got a little limited to us as far as customization and being able to do that. And I would say the one biggest thing, which we could probably take a whole couple of hours on this, exhibits are the one thing that I don't feel virtual has accomplished, is doing that. So anyways, Karlet, have you had experience with HeySummit?
Yes, very briefly. I have had experience with HeySummit, but you said you don't think exhibits, and I completely disagree.
Really?
There are two platforms that do the virtual trade shows, if you will, really, really, really well.
Okay.
Virbela. This is one of my absolute favorite platforms. Virbela.
Virbela, okay.
So have you guys experienced Virbela at all?
Not Virbela.
No, actually.
No.
So I light up when I talk about Virbela. It is incredible. It is incredibly expensive. It's a little bit more on the pricier end,
Sure.
But it is so immersive. It's so great, really interactive, lots of room for customization. Again, with that price tag being the way that it is,
Right.
Makes sense. It's really great for sponsorship opportunities. So if you're a client is looking for something to really showcase their sponsors and have like exhibits and expos and really get their audience involved, Virbela is an easy choice. It's really great.
Karlet,
Okay.
is it just exhibits and sponsorship, or is it a complete package?
It's a complete package. It's so great, Kevin. If you haven't already done a demo, set one up so that you guys can at least get a feel for it. It integrates with OBS vMix very seamlessly. It's really, 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 really great. In addition to that, VFairs does the expos really, really well. Also, pretty pricey price tag, but it's so worth it because it's so immersive, really engaging. And if you are looking to hold your audience's attention for a number of hours, those two platforms do it really, really well. I mean, there's a little bit of a learning curve,
Sure,
but it's worth it.
So I have a question about that. We have actually experienced VFairs. I've attended some events on that as well. The other one I'll have to get you to give me some more information about. I'm curious about it. But with VFairs, you kind of touch on the skeuomorphism aspect of it, right? The avatar, what's your experience with those kind of events? And do you find people relating to them, engaging with them, or spending too much time making their, I call them the Sims?
Yes. Great question. Both platforms, Virbela and VFairs, also have the opportunity to use the avatars. So I have experience with both. I find it is definitely distracting. I love customizing my avatar. I attended a 3-day event, and it's so much fun. I mean, it is The Sims, right? I don't know if you grew up in the 2000s. I'm definitely
gave that away.
Shout out to EA Games, right? It's so much fun. It is immersive. I love walking through the world with my avatar. You can be 10 years old or 50 years old and you're playing a video game, right? You're attending your company's conference and you get to play a video game for the day. I think it's great. I'm a huge fan of both platforms.
So one of the discussions that we've had is, do you feel that do you think that, is it good for all attendees of all demographics, of all professional scale? I mean, so in the medical space, sometimes we get a little stuffy, right? And we want the talking head with the slide deck because we're presenting educational, scientific information, evidence-based, education. And some of the vibe that we've gotten is not so sure that the medical space is as hip on the 3D immersive skeuomorphic, integrations. But what do you think? I mean, do you think that's a farce, or do you think, that there's some truth to that?
I think there's some truth to that. And I definitely think, again, organizers want to consider the demographic, right? And so depending on your industry, I don't necessarily think Virbela will probably be good for you. But if you are in the medical space or investment banking, which I've worked with a lot of investment bankers on virtual activations as well, they can be a little bit more stuffy as well. And they're not necessarily interested in an immersive world. However, if you are someone who is in an employee resource group and you're looking for a way to engage your team members, that's a great opportunity to do that. It's definitely shaking things up a little bit and getting out of the comfort zone of just the standard slides. I think there's room for every industry with all of these platforms, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. As you look at platforms for your event, coming up, you really need to think. Like with us, in the healthcare space, this is like one of the why I said about exhibits is they're highly regulated for pharmaceutical companies. We have to have design approvals 30, 60, 90 days in advance so that they can go through legal and regulatory and all of those things. And so when I see my friends putting on social media conferences and they pop up in the exhibit space, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I would love to be able to just pop up in the exhibit space and not have to go through all this rigmarole. However, I think the engagement and let me maybe pivot to this conversation, the engagement has not been the same as what they would experience of walking an exhibit floor. They can get close to it, but it's not quite the same. So as we are looking to 2022 and the trends coming up, pivoting to hybrid, right? So we have the in-person, we have the stream alongside of it. What are your thoughts on sponsorships and even the overall experience of hybrid? And are you looking at Hopin for that solution, or do you see some other solutions emerging that are going to really marry those two audiences?
Yep. So definitely, I am of the belief that hybrid events have always existed, right? Mm-hmm. We think about award shows. If we think about tailgating at NFL games, basketball games, hybrid has always existed. We've just now put a title on it officially in the industry, right? I'm also of the belief that there is room for hybrid in every virtual event, using Clubhouse or Hopin, or there's one company that I'm particularly in love with. It's called Next Tech AR, and they really incorporate augmented reality into their virtual activations. I am in love with their technology. It's app-based. You can incorporate holograms, which I am obsessed with, like the world. I know.
Wow.
Yeah. So as the future of virtual events kind of evolves, those are some of the things that I would challenge organizers to consider incorporating if they want to increase engagement.
And Carla, I think in some of the Clubhouse rooms that we both have been in, there's this whole conversation about MCs and professional MCs for your conferences, and possibly having two MCs, recognizing that in the hybrid event, you really have two audiences that you're joining together for a single experience. Do you want to talk about that? And from a platform standpoint, what would that look like?
Sure. I produced an event last year. It was a hybrid event utilizing Hopin. We had two separate teams in totality. So there's two logistic teams, if you will. There needs to be a logistic teams for the offline event, and then there needs to be a logistic team for the online, because you guys as much as I do, an online event takes an awful lot of time, and there's so much information that has to happen in order to pull the activation off, right? Including the links. There's a number of links that are involved. And so think about planning an offline event and all of the vendors that you have to manage. You have the same amount of management online, if not more, right? Because we have to cover every single every single segment. When you're looking at your run a show and you want to make sure it's really tight, the schedule is condensed, and every moment is accounted for with a virtual activation. So I think the world of hybrid, again, it's always existed. It's not going anywhere. It's just going to continue. You're going to continue to hear people talk about it. And more brands and organizations are going to start to incorporate hybrid in every single thing that they do because the reach is so extensive. I mean, we're global now. Everybody's global. Your event should be global. And if it isn't, you're doing something wrong.
So
Yeah.
good.
Brittany, what do you think about the audience generation side of hybrid? Do you think that's going to be challenging as we step back into it?
I don't know. I think that we have a unique client where I think a lot of our audience loves, now that we've been virtual, they love coming virtual. But I do think there's a group of people who love getting together in person. We have our big event every year, and they, I think, enjoy getting together. They, outside of the event, will grab dinner or network or hang out personally, and building those relationships are really important. And I don't know if we've completely mastered that virtually. So I think if we can combine it and do an awesome hybrid event, I think that's the perfect solution.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think, they're using a tool like Clubhouse or something like that to maybe build maybe this third space, which is where the two audiences meet and engage and kind of like the in-between, if you will. I mean, back in the day, we call it like, second screens, right? You would, be watching the sports game and you would be on Twitter. You'd have, this, 2-point, integration. I think hybrid's going to like expand that a little bit more to where there'll be third screen and fourth screen, integration with it. So maybe back to some of the fundamentals of platform. Someone's, looking at, they're planning a one-day conference, a summit, or something of that nature. And as they are putting that together, I think they need to think about their speakers, their presenters, how the stream is going to come together. If they're using, Ecamm or vMix or OBS, Ecamm is a Mac-only streaming platform. OBS is an open source that works on multiple platforms. vMix is a PC-based, platform very similar to Ecamm. But as they're putting all this together, I think. And you covered a lot with Hopin, but let's say that you were shopping and for whatever reason, you had to find the next event platform. What is your approach of research of looking out there? I mean, we had the experience of we expanded and did an exploded recipe to where our registrations on ThriveCart coming in through Infusionsoft into a WordPress site with Vimeo, with a stream, with Meeting Pulse's engagement. So we put together a custom recipe to match what our clients' needs were, and we were able to preserve and increase their sponsorship and the success of the event because of it. But let's say that you're out there and Hopin is not an option, not to take that off your table. I know you love Hopin, but what is your approach of finding that amazing platform?
Sure. I think I would recommend starting with a budget in mind.
Right.
I think I talk with a lot of clients and they kind of dive headfirst into the virtual events, right? Not considering a budget. There's access for everybody in this space. It's just a matter of how much accessibility do you want to have? How much engagement do you want to have? So definitely start with a budget in mind and then start with the end user in mind. And then from there, there's another organization that I really like. It's called Expo. Yeah. They can pretty much customize. Are you familiar with Expo?
Yeah. Yep.
Good. Pretty much white label and customize anything for anyone. I wouldn't say no matter your budget, but it's definitely flexible and accessible to everybody. There's also another platform called Welcome, Hello, Welcome, Love.
I haven't heard of Hello, Welcome.
Definitely check them out. They have really cool features, very similar to some of the others, AirMeet, Hopin again. Socio is really, really cool. Socio is great, actually. I am a fan of Socio because I think between Socio and AirMeet, it's accessible to everyone. Anyone can utilize it. If you're just starting off in the virtual event space, or you're looking for something that's out of the box and you have a larger audience, both of those platforms, AirMeet and Socio, can accommodate small to large audiences.
That's great. And then each one of those, like Socio, we looked at, at one point, and I think what we find is you really need to, like you said, budget is so important. Because I mean, honestly, we looked at platforms that were $100 a month subscription, all the way to platforms that were $75,000, and for a one-time event. And you will find anything and everything in between the two. And so you really have to identify, what is that budget? How much am I going to spend? How much, what's your ROI going to be for your client or for the conference you're producing, and work that out ahead of time. Because a lot of people, they kind of get the glamour in the eyes and say, we're going to do a virtual summit. It's virtual. It's not going to cost us anything because it's virtual, and all that type of thing. And then all of a sudden you get into, you want it to look like, what we're producing today, or you want to have the engagement, and all of a sudden you're dropping $5, $10, $15, $20,000 and you're not seeing that revenue return. But what we found is we really needed to put our own blueprint together of what does this event need. So it needs, a attendee to be sourced and to register. Okay, so you have registration options. Are there different ticket prices? Are there different things? Do members get free, or are there coupons? Are there affiliate, opportunities? Are you going to, empower your speakers to become your ambassadors and to also do audience generation coming in? And that right there separates a lot of the platforms out, if you're looking for the all-in-one type of experience. Then you go to the next stage. What are we doing for speaker management? Are the speakers submitting the slides or are the presentations to us? Are we doing pre-recorded video or live video? So we kind of have to go through this whole mapping out. And when you go through that process and what I usually do is I think day of show. I'm the attendee and I'm the producer, day of show. It's 12 o'clock, cameras roll. What are they going to see? What are they going to hear? What are they going to experience? What are we going to ask them to do? And where do we want them to end up, right? And if you take that and then start reverse engineering that, I think that gives you a lot of those pieces, that gives you that checklist that as you look at each platform, you start measuring against the checklist. And our team, we had spreadsheets upon spreadsheets of, this one got us 70% there. This one got us 20% there. And you start measuring them. But the next event you do, it changes all again.
Well, I was just going to say, that it's important to note that just because you do all this platform research, the platform that you started with is not going to be the same platform that you end with. And so make sure you're constantly going back and reevaluating and building that process into your team, because the platforms are constantly changing, constantly pivoting. There's that word again. And so I think it's really exciting to see that how all these platforms are continuing to evolve.
Yeah. So
I
Karlet,
agree.
There's so many details here. So let me go back to audience engagement. So we talked a little bit about Run the World and how they had some engaging things. What are some of the innovative things that you see out there that really brings the audience together? And what would you like to see that is not out there?
Sure. I think music, right? Music always brings everybody together. Music is international. I love to incorporate music into all of my activations, whether it's going to be a live performance or if it's something that's just streamed so you can, audibly hear it and have a dance party. What haven't I seen yet? Gosh, there's so much we haven't seen. I would like to, I don't know, Kevin, that's a good question. You stumped me. What happened? I think as the industry continues to evolve, we just want to consider high engagement, right? Like there's always, you never want to lull in your event.
No.
Like you never want to lull. Like it's very important to consider, again, how am I going to account for this moment? Are we going to incorporate a game? Is there going to be some sort of community moment? I have now leveraged the Mighty Network.
The Mighty Network. It's the community, right?
Yeah, so I encourage all of my clients, well, not all of them, but where it makes sense, to leverage the Mighty Network community and or a Slack channel if it makes sense, just so you have some sort of back-end engagement if you need to for chatting with your attendees, if you want to do something different.
Sure.
VIP activations, definitely leveraging Clubhouse, where they're able to connect with the speakers on a one-on-one chat. I mean, these are upsells and these are things that people didn't consider early on, but now as we're watching platforms evolve and the industry develop, these are things to certainly consider moving forward.
No, I
really
love
like the
that.
VIP Clubhouse aspect, Kevin. That's an interesting approach because you're giving them that FOMO and that little virtual roundtable. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I think with what you said there is, upsells, it's elevating the game. So going back to Mighty Networks, so Mighty Networks is a standalone platform. So I think that the go-to right now in the industry is we'll create a private Facebook group, right? And then we'll, at the end of the event, say, okay, everyone join us, or during the event or before the event, join us in this private Facebook group, and you're developing out this network there. There's always that concern of it's not your network, it's Facebook's network, right? And so that's where platforms like Mighty Network, and there's another one similar to Mighty Network I can't remember the name of right now. You can set up a standalone community that's very easy, intuitive, and interactive that you can send people to. That actually Ecamm just launched it may have been on Mighty Network. They just launched a community for entrepreneurs and streaming. But you can set up this community and send them to. So there you have a captive audience. And what I love about it is I now have an audience. I don't have to pay for advertising to re-engage for another event. Moving forward, you start building that community and that tribe element.
Yep. There's also Community, the app. It's called Community, which is like a text community. I personally use that as well. This is a great thing to incorporate into your virtual events for anyone that's having either small scale or large scale event. What it does is it literally gives organizers direct access to their audience throughout the entire event to text them. And what better way to increase engagement? We always have our phones in our hands, right? So whether we're watching video content on the screen and you want to engage with them in real time, whether running polls or Q&A or VIP segments or music or exclusive audio, etc. Having a text to give feature throughout your virtual activation is a great way to increase audience engagement.
So it's
Karlet, do you feel like having them look at their phone deters from them paying attention to what's on their screen? Does that make sense? Or no?
We're competing for attention all day, right? So
True.
Think about it as an attendee. So when you're on an event, if you're watching a virtual event, and someone texts you like, "Oh my gosh, did you see that moment?" You're like, "Yeah, I saw that moment." "Oh my gosh, did you see what she's wearing?" So it just increases the engagement. It's also that FOMO feature. If you're not on the text to get the text line, if you will, the group chat, right? The girlfriends group chat.
Yeah.
It is like an added element and also really fun.
Yeah, as you described that, that's exactly what I pictured. I pictured a group of my friends watching, I won't even name a show, and
no, I'm gonna say, Brittany, when we're texting during the Bachelorette, you can say it.
Okay, well, yeah.
Exactly.
It makes it so much more fun because I'm not experiencing it by myself, but now I'm experiencing it with my friends. And if you're in the group chat and you're not watching, you better get watching because you're missing out. So that's the same concept, I guess. So that's cool. Yeah.
But
so then what is that now called, right? So exactly what you just described, that's the new hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. That's the glue. Yeah, that's the glue of the hybrid audience. And, I love the idea of the FOMO element of the second conversation. I've even, heard of people using a text-based platform or, Slack is great. We use Slack internally, but sometimes there's that technical barrier. But something super text easy, and do giveaways and contests and build this big roar of audience on that platform, almost competing with what you have on stage, but delicately not competing with it. And so I think that's a powerful use of it. What's interesting is talking about apps. Back in the day of live events, when we did a ton of live events in production, we always would have a conference app, which would be standalone, separate from, our program, our agenda, our guide, our journal that we would, all the materials we would hand out. And we'd always pay $3, $5, $10, whatever $1,000 to develop this app, but we would just kill it with sponsorship and advertising on it. It would be another revenue source. We had sold sponsorship and advertising for our conference last year, and so we still had to use the mobile app, and we ended up using Event Mobi. I'm not sure if you've heard of Event Mobi. It's and they did a great job for the app, and then as we got into it, we're like, oh, we could have just done the whole event on Event Mobi instead of just the app. What are you seeing? I feel like our standalone event apps versus these all-inclusive platforms, do you think that they're going to morph into just like an event solution, or will there be standalone app platforms in the future?
I think there'll definitely be some involvement for sure. You have to. It's almost like you have to. Again, we're competing for attention. I think if we look at brands like Cvent, who is just a grandfather in the industry, and we've seen how they evolved throughout the pandemic, right? Like everybody knows, but have you seen the different features that Cvent has incorporated over the last few months? They've definitely improved on their app components. Watch Socio also incorporate an app component into their platform solution. And so I think if you don't have an app, you should develop one, because again, it's the attention factor. Is how can I engage with my audience? How can I keep their attention? And then how can I foster the relationship post-event? That is very important. I think putting on a virtual activation, the most important part of the activation is one, a clean stream, but then also the post-event activity, which is essentially how you're going to hold your audience's attention.
Right.
I think that's definitely a key takeaway for me is, we thought it would be a distraction, but everything else is competing with their attention anyway. So why not be that other distraction so that you're keeping them engaged, because our attention spans, let's face it, have definitely changed, right? So I really think we'll think a lot about that one and explore those platforms.
I agree.
I always say it's a tab for me, right? It's the tab. You want me to stay on your tab? Give me a reason to stay on your tab, because we've got like thousands of them open.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was something I did see on SwapCard when we were at the Evolve 2.0 conference that was cool, is if you moved away from a screen, they did have the picture-in-picture video that stuck with you as you moved around, for different pages, which I think that's all event platforms should have that, so you always have the broadcast. Meeting Pulse, when we use it as a standalone platform on the app, it actually can bring the stream in as well, which we kind of like, because if you're watching on your computer or you're on your iPad and then they move to the phone, they can carry the conference with them live. So speaking of live, any thoughts on, in a live stream conference, we have done it two ways. We've done the entire conference live, with slide presentations and live presenters and all that. We've also have done the not to use hybrid again, but a modified model to where we pre-record the education and we bring in the presenter live for Q&A at the end, just to give us a little bit of tech ease and ability of controlling the content. Any thoughts on that, of live stream everything or live stream some things, and how do you handle that with the audience to ensure trust to knowing what they're experiencing?
Yeah, I've done both. I am a huge advocate for, if you say it's going to be live, have it live. And if it's going to be pre-recorded, just have it pre-recorded. I think depending on the quality of the production, if you want a more high value production, the pre-record is an easy win, right? Because you get to do so many possibilities. You can do illustrations, you can do lots of editing, but I love when it's live. I mean, I love when there's the brain fart, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, wait, we gotta catch it. Like, I like that. It makes the audience feel connected to the speakers. I like when the Q&A is live. I like if it's pre-recorded and it's a high value production, I like, oh my God, look at that. Look what they did. That's so cool. How do they do that? Wow. You know what I mean? But I am a big advocate for keeping it live if it's live, or interspersing the pre-recorded moments here and there, but keep it live if it's live.
Yeah, I think our audience, it's interesting because we're in healthcare, a lot of our presenters are not as comfortable with, they don't have Ecamm Live in the studio and all of these things. They're really, sometimes they use their phone or whatever. And so with that, we try to safeguard our tech, but we also feel it's very important to disclose this is going to be a combination of pre-record content to give you the best educational experience, and we will then be live with the presenter at the end for live Q&A. And it seems like you said, you got it. I'm a stickler for that as well. If it's live, tell them it's live. If it's not, tell them it's pre-recorded. Ironically, my wife is in the middle of a conference this week, a virtual conference that she's attending, and we didn't know what it was. I mean, it was like sign up for free, but if you register, you get playback. If you register some more, you get playback plus some bonus things. And it was just like, it took a while to get into the groove of where to find the content. And then they ended up using basically a WordPress site with timed pages to have the video reveal, the pre-record video reveal at a specified time. And then you would have so long to watch the video. But then they had a live Zoom call interacted, with it, and that was the Q&A component. But then they had live stream not live stream, but premiere videos streamed on Facebook to also accompany it. So it was like hyper fragmented, from an attendee experience. What are your thoughts on design from an attendee point of view of how do you let your attendees know what to expect when they get to your event?
Gosh, this is such a great question. I'm really glad you asked. I am huge on speaker comms or just attendee communication. I've been to events, I've produced events for organizers. They didn't consider the communication with the attendees. How do I get there? Do I have to create a login? Is there an account that I need? Can I access it from Chrome, Firefox? Where do I get it on my phone? What time are the virtual doors going to open? What time do the virtual doors close? How long does the networking feature stay open for? Is the expo booth open all day? Communication, be as clear and concise as possible. I say over communicate because they're going to ask anyway. Set up a separate box if you can for Q&A. I think it's really important to consider FAQs in advance of the event. Also have a designated help desk built into all of your events. Doesn't matter what platform you're hosting your event on, consider building in a help desk where you have someone from your team that's available to answer questions in real time. If not, you can integrate some sort of speaker chat, maybe like utilizing intercom for some sort of on-event support. It's very important to have that built into the event because guaranteed somebody's going to get logged out. They can't access it. Reset your browser. You know the drift. But if you have that built into the event, it decreases all of the confusion. Communication is super important.
So good. Brittany and Amy were like, yes, amen, amen.
Yes.
They're ready for the altar call.
Yes.
Can someone lead us?
That's right. No,
really quickly, something that we didn't touch on that I want to make sure that we cover is the post-event activity. What do you do with the replay? Like, what do you do with the replay?
Right.
Do you give it away for free or do you sell the replay? Where do you house the replay? This is something that organizers should also consider with their virtual events. Make sure to ask your platforms or when you're doing your platform research, does the platform have the ability to house the replay? Do you need to, integrate a third-party video content sort of container? Is it going to be Vimeo? Is it going to be like a Thinkific? Are you selling the event as a course? These are things to consider and I think really beneficial to organizers.
So good that you brought that up. We actually, for our events currently, we use Wistia to host the replay and we put them into our LMS and everything. But I think there's so much more that we could do, because the content, especially if it's live content, some of that content's never been heard before, right? And how are you leveraging, even taking it and putting it into teaser reels of, sharing that on social, pointing people back to, the encore, experience, of the conference. But also I think another, and this could be a whole nother show by itself, is post-event attendee engagement. How do you keep that conversation going until you need to ask them to do something else? And I think that's a whole series, probably a masterclass on post-attendee engagement.
Very true.
Awesome. Well, if there's any questions coming in, we've had a few comments come in. We had let's see, jfloyd.co saying great events always start with event design. Yep, absolutely. Completely agree. And Todd Dixon, this discussion's been fascinating, taking notes and learning a lot. Thank you so much for being with us. And we have a couple here that the names didn't pop in. I bet you that's Elicio Way.
I was going to say, that looks like Elicio. Hey, Elicio.
And then the event that we mentioned for Ecamm was, Leap into Live, streaming, which was great. Tay also mentioned earlier that she loves Clubhouse and she launched her Facebook support group for video creators last week on this platform. Awesome. Great idea. Great idea. So if you have any questions, we only have a few more moments. I want to respect our guests' time, but just in wrap up. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Oh yeah, another user said that they just turned in late. They're going to catch the replay. Yeah, the replay will definitely be up on YouTube and up on Facebook. You can find it in a couple of different locations for that. So Karlet, what's your biggest takeaway? What do you want to leave the audience with as they look at platforms, and then definitely tell us how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. My biggest takeaway for you is hire professionals. Hire the pros. You've got myself, you've got Kevin and his team. Hire professionals. The first thing you can do is go into a virtual event head first, thinking you can handle it if you don't have the skill set to do so, right? There's way more to virtual events than just the live streaming component. There's tons of logistics, details, research. There's a lot that goes on the back end, and it just makes your job so much easier, and you look better with your audience when you hire professionals.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and Karlet, how can our audience get in touch with you?
Sure. So you can get me at karlethewitt.com or the purpointgroup.com. I hang out on my Instagram stories a heck of a lot. I like it there. And I'm also on Clubhouse. So Karlet Hewitt all over the internet.
So good. So good. Brittany, Amy, any last questions for Karlet?
No, but thank you so much. I learned a lot. I'm going to go back and take my own notes.
I was going to say, yeah, I agree. There's quite a few platforms that I'm looking forward to kind of doing some research on and seeing what kind of features and things that we can incorporate with other clients of ours as well. Thank you so much for being here, Karlet.
Yeah, thank you so, Karlet. I look forward to definitely continuing this conversation as we move forward. And everyone, stay tuned. We're going to wrap up. We're going to let Karlet go. I got to tell you, she is the queen of the 5 and 10 and 15-minute phone calls. If you ever need any coaching on how to just like get it done on phone calls, Karlet, she is the queen of that. So Karlet, thank you so much. Everyone stay tuned. I also want to thank our sponsors. Again, Ecamm, TubeBuddy, and our own Lyons Solutions. Thank you so much. And I'm going to be back here in just a minute. We're going to go to a little bit of a break. I'm going to be back and I'm going to be talking about some of the production pieces that we use to produce our event conferences. I'll be on for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. If you have any questions about event technology, how we stream, equipment we use, cameras we use, and so forth, we'll be back with that. So I'll be back here in just a few minutes. Thank you. All right, I'm back again, Kevin Lyons, and again, that was such a great conversation. I just appreciate Karlet coming on and spending some time with us. She is in the middle of a lot of transition. She just had an exciting move, and I just appreciate her so much for her insight and definitely tons of experience. And the whole concept of Clubhouse and using that's something that I think we will probably take a deeper look at, especially as Discord and Twitter Spaces come on. I think some of the philosophy behind Clubhouse and why it's been so engaging, if you will, is possibly Zoom fatigue and some of the, everyone's not always all about video, right? So I always like to spend a couple minutes at the end of our broadcast. If you have any questions on the technology we use or anything related to production and production design, let me know. But just, to give you an overview. So we stream, today's broadcast is streamed on Restream to multiple platforms. And so Restream is actually a couple of things. It has its own stream producer, but also does a lot of multi-streaming. So we have this broadcast going to Facebook, to a couple of pages actually on Facebook, and a group on Facebook, on YouTube, on a couple of different channels. And Restream gives you the ability of taking a single feed and going to multiple places. The reason why I started using Restream is when we produce our larger conferences, we need a lot of safeguards, and I'm a big fan of backups and redundancies. So we use Restream because it gives me a fail point, meaning that I can send two what's called RTMP feeds, which are basically the feed of the video stream itself that also has a back channel that I can receive comments and stuff in. I can send two of those to Restream to where if one of those two fail at any time, the second one picks up. The other thing I can do is I can actually have two platforms on two different networks sending to the same Restream on the two RTMP feeds to where, once again, if one fails, the other one can pick up. The next point of failure that we have, or point of risk of failure, or point of prevention of failure we have, is on Restream. I can on the fly turn on and off different endpoints. So I can turn off a Facebook feed, I can turn on a Facebook feed, I can add a brand new RTMP signal into Restream. I'm looking over here because that's where my Restream is, or a brand new RTMP feed into it and turn it on instantly. And so where that really kind of came into play is as we did, I think we've done probably approaching 40 virtual events now, anywhere from a single webinar all the way to a multi-day conference over at the Lyons Den, is we, so the workflow is we stream out of Ecamm to Restream. Restream then has that failover point, and we usually stream only to Vimeo because Vimeo is one of the few video platforms that you can embed inside another WordPress site or another platform like Meeting Pulse or Slido, and it's protected to where someone can't take that stream and watch it by itself. Whereas YouTube, even with a private link, you can still open up a source in the browser and find where that private link is located, take it and distribute it to people that maybe didn't pay to access to that content. So Restream is pointed to Vimeo. So let's say that there is a connection issue or an issue with Vimeo or an issue with my stream to Restream. I now have Restream the ability of hot switching from one RTMP to another. And we did have a couple of failures during some of our larger events, but we were able to mitigate the time. And so it's not about the failure. If your stream goes down, if a camera knocks over or whatever, it's how you recover that failure. And we were able to mitigate the time to about 5 or 10 seconds on those failures, as we kind of navigate through that. So that's Restream. We also use Ecamm Live. I use it on 4 different Macs. We also use a lot of Skype still as green room. So we have individual Skype channels set up for each of the presenters that we bring into our conference. And we have a host, one of our team members of Lyons Den, is moderating each of those channels, bringing them in. We also send out cameras and microphones and ring lights to all of our presenters. They're not super expensive cameras and microphones. I think the whole kit's maybe $300 or something like that. And we do that to try to give a baseline of quality out for all of our presenters as they're participating. Now, if they're a keynote or something, we may go ahead and send them one of our nicer cameras like, the Sony, ZV-1 or something like that, just to give them a crisper 1080p 30 frame per second, feed back up. We also do a lot of coaching with our presenters of things like make sure you have a wired Ethernet connection, make sure you close all those browsers and have only open the either Skype application or the Ecamm interview browser in Chrome, so that you have no competing bandwidth. And I think that's another important thing as we talk about production, is understanding what bandwidth your speakers and presenters need, and when you bring them into production, what bandwidth you need. Another big thing is back-channel conversation. Karlet mentioned this a little bit when she talked about communication with the audience, but also with the presenters, is you have emails going back and forth, but there's latency in email, so you always want to have a text number. You always want to have an open chat or a real-time chat or a Slack channel with that presenter. Anyways, these are just some of the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis here in the Lyons Den. And if you ever have any questions, leave a comment and we'll get back to those comments, or you can always reach out to us. I'm accessible at kevin@theevent.stream. So that's kevin@theevent.stream, and feel free to email me. So next week we have coming up a great great discussion on registration and marketing. How do we get the butts and seats? How do we promote the conference? How do we promote the event, the webinar? How do you find new customers? How do you engage your existing customers who can come and participate? And we will be announcing our special guest shortly on that. Well, thank you for joining me today, and we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 12 noon on the event stream. Take care.